The Battle of Ohio features two pretty banged up teams. Let's get an update on Ja'Marr Chase, then dive into a preview of the Bengals' Week 8 opponent.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're your only daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we're free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We appreciate all of you who subscribe, who hit that thumbs up button, and who make us your first listen. You can join that club pretty easily just by doing all of those things wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. And we've got some potential good news on Ja'Marr Chase as more information has slowly trickled out over the weekend, and some clearly good news on Trey Hendrickson, who will play against the Browns. But let's start with Ja'Marr Chase, James. And the news is that he is, at least for now, and that's my caveat, not the Bengals caveat, at least for now, not going on to injured reserve, which means, to me, there is a chance this team thinks that he will be able to play before that fifth week or fourth game that he would have to miss if they were to put him on IR. I think that's all it means. I think that the Bengals truly don't know what the recovery is going to look like for Ja'Marr Chase, waiting for that bone healing, waiting to see if that reported labral tear is actually causing him pain or not. And they're probably going to be in a place in a few weeks where they might have to reevaluate and figure out where they're going to go. But there's a chance that he gets back, and if he can play before that 4-game window that would be required if the Bengals did put him on IR, well, carrying him on the 53 where you have healthy scratches anyway isn't going to be detrimental to the team. So that's why I think they're keeping him on the 53 for now. What do you think, James?
It is, yeah. And look, they're waiting for that bone to heal. He's going to have to play through the labrum tear. If he returns this year, that's what's going to have to happen. Otherwise, he's going to have to undergo surgery, and it's going to be a while. So you hope that that's this offseason. You hope he's having it, after drinking a bunch of champagne in the middle of February, right? And so that's their hope. But you just don't know how quick a bone is going to heal. No one knows. And it is a hairline fracture. So you would imagine that it should take some time, but not all of the time. And so I think that that's the route they're going. And I do think it makes sense. But I also get the people that are like, oh, well, just let him heal. I think they are going to let him heal. I think they're just like, well, this dude's a freak show. Maybe that bone is going to heal quicker. And we've seen him. He played with this. So if the bone is healed, then there's nothing holding him back. Like, I think he'll be able to play through the pain from the tear. So I think that that's the part of it that they're sort of waiting on. And the other thing, and I just want to hammer this home because there's been some that have gotten it confused, I guess, weeks versus games. Ja'Marr Chase, if they put him on injured reserve, he would be out until at least December 4th against the Chiefs. He wouldn't play against the Titans, wouldn't play against the Steelers. They obviously have the bye. He'd be out for the Panthers game. And so what I think the Bengals are doing by not placing him on IR is saying, all right, we know we're not going to have you for Cleveland. We know we're not going to have you for Carolina. Then we have a bye. That's 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Let's rescan this thing after the bye, see where you're at. And maybe you can play against Pittsburgh, or maybe you'll be able to suit up against Tennessee. 2 games that are obviously going to be important to their chances in the AFC. 2 teams, one, the Titans vying for a playoff spot. The other one, obviously, an AFC North opponent that beat you earlier this season.
They do need to get that AFC North win, and that starts this week. We'll get into that shortly. The only thing I want to add, James, is that the torn labrum in the hip is a bit of a mystery right now. We as is the hip fracture, actually. We don't know which bone, and there's like 5 different bones this could refer to. That's actually got this quote unquote hairline fracture, which also from a like medical nomenclature perspective doesn't tell us a whole lot other than probably whatever's broken is not displaced. And probably this isn't an avulsion fracture. So those are the 2 things that hairline fracture tells us. From what I understand, this isn't like particularly descriptive medical terminology. The torn labrum part is interesting because my understanding about this injury
And it is in his hip, by the way. This
Yeah,
isn't a shoulder,
not
just
a
to
shoulder.
be clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple labrums in the body, not the shoulder labrum that T. Higgins and Logan Wilson had to get surgery to correct. But a similar piece of anatomy.
It's cartilage.
It doesn't heal on its own very well. It doesn't have a lot of blood supply because it's really in the joint, is my understanding. But the important thing that I was trying to hit here is, for some people, these are totally asymptomatic injuries. My understanding is you could put me and James and all of our listeners into an MRI and look at our hip labrums. And some of us with no hip pain are going to have labral tears. So it's possible that they found this thing and it's not even, I'm not saying it's not causing him pain, but it's possible that this is just something they happen to find that isn't causing him problems. If it is causing him problems, then yeah, maybe there's an off-season surgery to correct it. Honestly, I'm hoping that's not required, because the recovery from, I mean, we saw it with T. Higgins and Logan Wilson in the shoulder. The recovery is similar in the hip. It can be, 3 to 9 months, depending on the person. And hopefully for a professional athlete, getting really good care is on the shorter side, but it's not a nice recovery for a laparoscopic surgery.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you never want to undergo surgery. I just, odds are, if I had to guess, Jamar comes back this season at some point.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to play through some pain. Maybe not. Maybe you're right. But I just, that's kind of how I have it, because clearly he was dealing with some pain in the past 2 weeks and was able to play through it. And is that the fracture? Is that the tear? Is that both?
Maybe there's also that hip flexor strain. Maybe there's also a muscle thing going on, because that's what was originally reported, right? And so maybe there's just a whole lot going on. But the news we have for now is that he's not going on IR, which means, as James points out, there is a slim chance, I would say, that he's back for the Steelers game after the bye. A slightly bigger chance maybe going every week after that. There's also a chance that they're going to look at this thing in 4 weeks and say, this isn't going the way we think it needs to. And there is a negative outcome here, but let's not talk about that. They're expecting a full recovery. They're expecting this to be a bone healing issue and then a pain management issue, which suggests that he could get back and should get back this season. Tyler Boyd in the locker room, for example, calling it a nagging injury, not calling it, a really bad injury or anything like that.
Yeah, they need that bone to heal, and you don't know. It's a risk, because you don't know if it's going to be 3 weeks, if it's going to be 6 weeks, or if it's going to be longer for whatever reason. So Jamar, put those feet up, play some Call of Duty, relax, listen to Locked On Bengals, and get right, because they're certainly going to need you in the near future with that December-January slate.
And they will have to find a way to win without him in the interim. And I think they can do it, James. We can talk a little bit about the schedule coming up, maybe after this game. We have to talk, though, about their Week 8 matchup, Halloween, Cleveland, Monday Night Football. And there's a lot of injuries on both sides of this one. So let's dive into some of these matchups and get into a bit of a game preview coming up next.
Today's show brought to you by BetterHelp Therapy Online. BetterHelp Therapy is modern therapy that is going to help you find solutions to your problems. So many times people focus on the problems and not necessarily the solutions. Well, everyone deserves to feel their best, and BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. There's no waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist, and they have screening questions that let you find a therapist right away, and you can switch therapists at any time. And you can get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
James, let's dive into this game. The Bengals taking on the Browns for the first time this season. Joe Burrow, very aware of his record against the Browns. The Bengals ready to, the Browns have been beating up the Bengals for a while, but you have a take.
Yeah, I have a take. I just wanted to start with the take. Might as well.
Perfect.
So we've spent a lot of time on Jamar Chase this week, right? A lot. The Bengals also going to be without DJ Reader, Logan Wilson returning, Trey Hendrickson returning. Is it wild to think that the Browns are just as shorthanded
No.
Because to me, Denzel Ward is such a huge part of what they do. He's still out with the concussion. I just assumed that he would be back after missing a couple of weeks. He's not back. So I hope
told
you
you
get
we'd
well
have to
soon,
keep an
Denzel.
eye on that one.
No doubt. I mean, it's get well soon. That's scary now for him. And they're always scary, but certainly more scary now. You're missing multiple weeks in such a huge game. David Njoku, we knew he wouldn't be able to play, but that's a big part of their offense. He's wide receiver 2 for them, just to be clear, and certainly a red zone threat. But then Wyatt Teller, who we're going to talk about this run game with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and they're going to be using Kareem Hunt every which way probably to show him off so they can deal him to the Rams or the Bills or whoever they want to deal him to, but before the trade deadline. But like Wyatt Teller is an awesome lineman. And guess where you were worried about the Bengals defensive line? Well, the interior with Reeder and, Josh Tupou out. Well, that takes a little bit of pressure off of them. So, yeah, I think the Browns are just as shorthanded. And the Bengals, they get a break here. No Denzel Ward, no Jamar Chase. All right, so it's 1 versus 1. And they should still be able to operate and move the ball. And then stopping the run game is still going to be tough. But without Wyatt Teller, it's not as tough.
And, of course, they also lose their center, right, in the offseason.
Sure.
So, and everybody wanted the Bengals to sign the guy. So, the offensive line on the interior for the Browns now, Ethan Pokic. I actually
instead of JC. Yeah, instead of Treader, JC Treader.
Instead of JC Treader. Right guard, man, these names for the Browns on the interior. Hjalte Froholt, who's actually a guy that I think I wanted the Bengals to take a flyer on when he came out in 2020 or something. But the Joel Bitonio is still there. He's still good. Jedrick Will's still there, still good. Jack Conklin's still there, still good. But you're right. The interior guys not necessarily the interior guys that the Bengals faced here last year. I still think the Browns are probably going to be able to find some success in the running game. I think they're going to have to. But something I think I mentioned earlier in the week is Kevin Stefanski doesn't have the patience that Arthur Smith has with his running game. And you've seen that they're willing to put the ball in Jacoby Brissett's hands more than last week Atlanta was willing to put the ball in Marcus Mariota's hands. And so you go back to game script again this week against these teams that love to run the ball, that want to shorten the game, all this stuff. If you can get up on them and you can start fast the way the Bengals started fast against Atlanta last week, then you can make things harder from just a scripting perspective. It's harder to run the ball when you're down. Obviously, there's a psychological aspect there. There's a urgency, practical aspect there. Like, you don't have as much time if you're trailing to stick with that and be patient with that. And so I think that'll be, again, a pretty interesting factor this week. Last week, the Bengals won the game and on their first 4 drives, and then they just had to finish it, right? And if they could do the same thing this week, that would be obviously ideal. But the challenge this week is adapting, right, and figuring out how are we going to do this without Jamar. Mm-hmm. And they've been spending the whole week thinking about it. They did bring in Dede Westbrook, by the way, for a workout on Saturday, in addition to several other receivers, Daz Newsome and a couple other guys. I'm finding their names now. Javonte Payton and Victor Bolden. Most of the slot guys here.
Yeah. Which I'll be honest, I hate this idea. They don't. What are we doing? But as you mentioned, and you mentioned it last week, technically now, as people listen to this potentially, they've loved Dede. They've loved themselves some Dede Westbrook. And so Dede Westbrook might be, to me, as long as he worked out and did what they were probably expecting him to do, I feel like he's the front runner. Daz Newsome is also a notable name. And so those are the two that would stand out the most to me. And I will say this, they watched a lot of Daz Newsome tape last year in that draft, because who else were they watching? Your boy. Go ahead. You remember? He went to Washington. Atwell? No, he got drafted by Washington, the deep threat out of North Carolina. You don't remember?
Oh, Diami Brown, of course.
Diami Brown, yeah.
Wait.
So,
yeah. Daz Newsome was UNC. I thought he was Louisville for some reason. Okay, that's why I thought Tutu for some reason. I'm pretty sure.
No, you're
right.
Am I wrong?
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
So they're familiar with him just because, not that I think they were in love with Daz Newsome in the draft, but they were definitely looking at Diami Brown.
I think they're for some reason I'm not a clear memory. I thought there was some interest in Daz Newsome as well, or maybe it was just
Maybe.
mock
I mean, he
drafts.
got drafted in the 6th round.
Yeah.
So they had their shot at him. So we'll see.
It's an interesting mix of guys for whatever it's worth. By the way, D.D. Westbrook, Daz Newsome, Victor Bolden, all of more slot kind of oriented receivers. Some of them, D.D. Westbrook in particular, has played outside as well. Javonte Payton is the more vertical guy here, the more explosive athlete here, who's got questions, I think, a little bit as like, what can he do as an actual football player? Anyway, that's a bit of a sidebar. The Bengals need to figure out how to attack this defense of the Browns without Jamar Chase. And you still have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, who are having fantastic seasons. Trenton Irwin sounds like he's likely going to be the practice squad call-up as Stanley Morgan's not going to play. But Denzel Ward not out there. And so it's Martin Emerson, Greedy Williams, Greg Newsome at corner. And this is a defense. Grant Delpit, John Johnson at safety, not playing great this year. This is a defense that hasn't been good this year. Just like the Falcons defense hadn't been good this year. I know they have practice squad corners. These guys are NFL corners. There's a difference. But collectively, the Browns defense has consistently underachieved this year. You have to deal with Myles Garrett.
Yep.
You have to deal with Jadeveon Clowney. And those guys are also banged up. Clowney DNP limited this week. Garrett still dealing with some bumps and bruises from his car accident. JOK, Owusu-Koramoah, also missing some practice this week. I think he's questionable officially. Newsome also questionable. I think they're going to play, but find ways to continue to make the Browns defense look bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing you have to deal with to do that is really Myles Garrett.
Yeah. Keep Burrow upright and let him slice and dice and dissect his way downfield. It is that simple. I think if they keep Burrow upright, he's still going to be able to find T and Tyler, and you'll mix in some Mike Thomas, who, by the way, had a touchdown reception against the Browns on Thursday Night Football 2 years ago. Right? So it's not like he hasn't had some success at First Energy Stadium, which matters to a guy that hasn't played in a while. He's like, oh yeah, I caught a touchdown here on a slant that kept us back, and got us back in the game in the fourth quarter. This offense should still be able to move the ball. And part of my confidence in that is they don't have this island corner in Denzel Ward that is just going to be chasing T all over. There's a reason Jamar Chase told me before the on-site viral comments. It was in OTAs. We were back in the locker room. I was like, Jamar, I was just introducing myself, getting to know him. It's like, who's the best corner you faced? He's like, man, Denzel Ward's awesome. It's awesome. And so not having him, that's a big loss for this defense, for this Browns defense. The key to me on offense, if you can start fast, because this is a desperate Browns team. This is a woodshed game, woodshed moment. Start fast, take the crowd out of it a little bit. It's going to completely, just like you did last week, completely derail any type of momentum. If you start slow and it's, oh man, no Jamar Chase, they look out of sync. You know what? Those first 15 plays are as important as any plays in this game to me, because you got to keep Burrow upright throughout. But if you can jump out on them, doubt will creep in. You'll get the boo birds. Like it will not be hard to get boos here. They've lost 4 straight, right? Get up 10-0, get up 14-0, score right away, and then force them to go 3 and out. Like if you do that, it can turn really, really quickly in front of a crowd that's going to be really hyped.
I think there's an opportunity to run the ball here as well this week, especially inside. The Browns' interior on defense is just straight up bad. I mean, maybe they make plays in this game, maybe they play well, but by and large this year, the interior of that defense for the Browns has not been good. It's been neglected. It's been a major point of contention for Browns fans. Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett, still good players. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, good player. But there's a vulnerability there. And, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, still really good. And so continuing to use the underneath part of the field the way they did so effectively last week against the Browns, using the middle of the field with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, it's going to look different. And they'll have to find new ways to be explosive. That'll be the big challenge this week. But that's what's ahead of this team, and that's what they have to figure out. And this defense, again, leaves something to be desired. So the Bengals should find ways to move the ball. But what happens when the Browns have the ball? Nick Chubb, man, that guy is quite good at football. But is there anything else to really threaten the Bengals defense? Let's dive into that coming up next.
Whether you're looking to pop the question or have a milestone to celebrate or want to let your love sparkle, if you're outside of the Cincinnati area, BlueNile can help make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, BlueNile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Maybe you're looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone, but you're having trouble choosing. Well, BlueNile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find that gift. Make your moment sparkle. If you're outside of the Cincinnati area with BlueNile, go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BlueNile, BlueNile.com with code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com, promo code LOCKEDON.
When the Browns have the football, you're worried about Nick Chubb, you're worried about Joel Bitonio, Jack Conklin, these good blocking offensive linemen, the most elusive and powerful and complete running back in the NFL, and Nick Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Amari Cooper and the play action game that they're going to try to work in. And, you know, they don't have David Njoku, like you said. There's Donovan Peoples-Jones. You got to keep him in front of you. Cam Taylor-Britt, by the way, in line to start for Eli
Going
Apple.
to start, yes.
So
Eli not so happy about it, but
I mean, he's got a hamstring. What's he going to do? Is he actually unhappy about it? Why do you say that?
I think so. Yeah, of course. He's benched. Got benched last week. He got benched last week. He was limited Wednesday. Then it slowly tailed off. Is he hurt? Yeah, I think he's hurt. I also think Cam Taylor-Britt was starting this week regardless.
Yeah, but if Eli's just like not active, I guess it's nice timing for the Bengals coaching staff.
Correct, because I think Cam Taylor-Britt was starting regardless. That's all I'm saying. I'm not.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that he's going to start for the rest of the season. Played more snaps last week. I mean, it's not really that takey.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, last week, like we said at the time, I think Atlanta team, they felt really good about what they were doing. That, you know, the Atlanta receivers don't necessarily threaten you a ton outside of Drake London. So,
and then Damiere Byrd said, "Hey,
yeah." Well, maybe the Bengals should go get Damiere Byrd. The Bengals, though, in this game do get Trey Hendrickson back. No Josh Tupou, no DJ Reader again. They do get Logan Wilson back, James, like you said. So not having DJ, kind of a bummer for this kind of game against this kind of offense. But last week, outside of one drive, they were really quite good against Atlanta, who I know was missing Cordero Patterson, but have been very efficient in the running game, even without him. Not quite at the level of the Browns, who I do think have probably the best running game in the NFL and have for feels like 3 years now, 4 years.
Yeah.
The entire Callahan Chubb era has been very kind to the Browns running game. But with some of those injuries, some of the replacements on the offensive line, and the way the Bengals defense has played this year, there's reason to have some optimism here that they'll be able to slow Chubb down. It comes down to tackling, and he's very hard to tackle. The Bengals had a bad tackling game against, a couple of weeks ago against the Saints, I think, in the running game. Needs to be a little bit better this week, more like they've done all year.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick Chubb's going to make that hard on you, but that's going to be really important in this game.
You have to stack them up. You know, it can't be just one guy. Like if it's Von Bell versus Nick Chubb, all right, well, Nick Chubb's going to win. And I think Von Bell is a great tackler, right? But if it's 24 versus 24, you know, Jesse Bates made some great tackles in space last week. Going to be hard to do that against Nick Chubb. And so it's got to be a gang tackling approach. Heck, Sam Hubbard this week called Nick Chubb the best running back in the NFL. And he did it like on one podcast and one interview, then another interview, then another interview. Like he's been very consistent with that message this week that Nick Chubb is the best running back in the NFL. And I agree with him. Like, he's consistent. Obviously, I covered him for a bit. And I think he's threat number one. So Myles Garrett's threat number one overall. Nick Chubb is right there with him and certainly number one on the Browns offense. And then there's a couple of rungs before anybody else, even though Amari Cooper's really good, even though Kareem Hunt's dangerous with the ball. Nick Chubb is the guy. If you slow him down, it's going to go a long way towards you winning. If you flip it, if he gets going, then man, things can open up. It doesn't need to be this crazy game for Jacoby Brissett, and he can still find ways play action wise to get the ball to Amari Cooper and to get the ball to their other tight ends with Njoku out. and push the ball downfield maybe to Donovan Peoples-Jones. So
yeah,
start with 24, slow him down, and it'll go a long way towards stopping this offense.
make Jacoby Brissett beat you. Make Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones beat you, because
against your secondary, because your secondary is good.
You feel good about it. And the Amari Cooper, Chidobe Awuzie matchup this week, by the way, after Cheeto got the best of him in the offseason NFL chess tournament, and these guys obviously teammates back in Dallas. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Just a couple stats on Nick Chubb, because these are like pretty mind-blowing. He's forced 47 missed tackles according to PFF this year, which is 9 more than the guy in second place, Dameon Pierce, at 38, and is 36 more than Joe Mixon's 11 forced missed tackles this year. Obviously very different running backs, but I mean, when you just talk about the differences there,
for sure.
Woo! The other one, after contact, 4 yards after contact, which is actually not the best in the NFL, but is very close and certainly is the most for a very high volume running back. Joe Mixon, by comparison, at like 2.
He has over 500 yards after contact this year.
It's insane.
Like, think about 500 yards after contact. So their offensive line, let's say they don't have the best day. Well, guess what? Chubb is still getting every yard that's out there and then some.
So hard to tackle. I say running backs don't matter sometimes. Nick Chubb, one of the few that right now definitely does. The last one that's fun on Nick Chubb, 24 runs of 10+ yards this year, which is 5 more than Josh Jacobs' 19. And where's Joe Mixon on this list? There he is, 7 for Joe Mixon. Obviously, the Bengals running game not working the way the Browns is, but you just compare those numbers, the gap between Chubb and like number 3 on this list is 9 out of 24. It's pretty wild how good of a year he's had, averaging nearly 6 yards per carry overall. Khalil Herbert, by the way, 6.2. Shout out Khalil Herbert and the Bears. Not that we need to get into that, but that's why it's just so important, right?
Yeah.
You make the Browns beat you any other way, if you can. And without DJ Reader and without some bodies on that interior, that's harder. But, Sam Hubbard, our guy Jay Tufele, my guy Jay Tufele, if they can step up again and make some of those plays again, that's a big part of how to slow this Browns offense down.
Yeah. And I think it's prediction time. I'm revising it because it was ages away. The last prediction I made, my goodness, think about how different this game was when I made that prediction during our crossover. I'm still taking the Bengals. Spoiler alert. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be ugly at times. I think there's going to be some significant lulls in this Bengals offense where maybe they do try to get the running game going and it doesn't go as well, or there's an incomplete or two that you're used to it happening and completing, but they're going to have to work through some things without Jamar Chase. The good news is Denzel Ward isn't there. And I think they're going to be able to do enough to Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, but mostly Myles Garrett, to slow him down, keep Joe Burrow upright enough. Bengals get a W on Monday Night Football. Evan McPherson, game winner late, because Money Mac always delivers, even on Monday nights when banks have closed. 23-20, Money gets the win. Bengals improve to 5-3.
You like the relatively low-scoring game?
Yeah.
All
yeah.
Right.
You think it's going to be high school? You think the Bengals are going to drive 30+?
Sure.
You just think they're going to roll over them. This environment's crazy. I'm in Cleveland as we record this. It's going to be tough.
I think that they could surprise us. I don't know. The Browns defense has been bad against like worse offenses, even without Jamar Chase. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, really good, and important not to undersell that. Joe Burrow, still the quarterback of the Bengals.
I just think there's an adjustment period when you lose Chase, because everything's like revolving around. It's like him and Burrow, and then everything else revolves around it.
It means you can't throw those little 15-yard go stops and have Jamar Chase run it 40 yards after the catch. He's done that 2 weeks in a row. So you lose that explosive, unpredictable, lightning in a bottle aspect of Jamar Chase. But the rest of the offense has been good. Do they go back under center? Do they stay in shotgun? That's a big thing I'm watching this week. I think they need to stay in shotgun. Absolutely. I don't think losing Jamar Chase means you go back under center, try to put 2 tight ends on the field, especially when your tight end 2 is Mitch Wilcox. So no shade to Mitch Wilcox.
Mitch Wilcox is a great ping pong player.
Great football player?
Ping pong player.
Okay. I didn't hear you.
And I like Mitch. Right?
Yeah, no shade at Mitch
and
Wilcox.
He can catch.
I hope he goes off this week, but it's you're not scaring people in 12 personnel. So it's not like they have great other options. Is it more 2 running back stuff? I don't know. They don't seem very inclined to do that sort of thing. So it's do the things that you've been consistent with.
Man, running out of the Thomas shotgun season. It's Mike Thomas season. Let's go, Mike T. 80's about to have 80.
Okay, that's a hot take. Utilizing 80 those yards. Gaps in the zone, right, and finding Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins underneath, and adapting. It's going to be an adaptation. You're right about that. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. Weird things happen. You can't let Myles Garrett wreck the game. That's what I'm most concerned about. That is what would derail the Bengals offense this week. But they've been going. Joe Burrow's been playing well. And it all goes through the quarterback. So I'm looking to Joe Burrow to keep it going here.
Yeah, I think he's certainly capable. And it's a good test. And by the way, if you were in on, let's say you went to BetOnline and wagered on Joe Burrow for MVP at any point, this is the time where he could really, really separate him. So you tell me if he goes on the road with no Jamar Chase and puts up big numbers, that's not going to help and launch him and vault him into the MVP conversation.
Yeah,
certainly could. So we'll see if he can get it done on Monday night.
And he's motivated. We'll be back after Monday Night Football with your game recap right here on Locked On Bengals, covering the Cincinnati Bengals every day. Until next time, Bengals fans, enjoy Monday Night Football. Happy Halloween, Hoo Day, and have a good one.